Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're your hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every weekday, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can find all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues affecting you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
Good evening, everyone. It is March 13th, 2025, High Day Eve, and this is the regular monthly meeting of Fitchburg's Transportation and Transit Commission. So we're called to order, and let the record show that all commissioners are here. There are no members of the public, so we'll move to approval of the agenda. Entertain a motion.
Approve.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Micah. Anyone want to make any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the agenda as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, next up, the minutes of our last meeting, February 13th. Entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
Thank you, Bill.
I'll second.
Thank you. On to any suggested changes to the minutes? Thank our Secretary Dina for that. Seeing none, all in favor of approval as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're making great progress here. Let's see if the staff report can be as fast.
Yeah, I was asked to provide an update on our federal funding for our projects. That is included in where I was going to talk about the projects anyway. So first off, Sain Road, Phase 3 construction, which is the McCoy and Sain intersection. Construction there starts March 24th. Phase 2, which is between Sherrill and East Clayton, starts April 21st and possibly the following week. Actually, I just got a call today that they might start a week late, but we're still figuring that out. The Capital City Trail will be open for the duration of that project, but if you're biking or walking on the Cap City Trail, please respect the signage and flagging for where it crosses Sain. That the actual crossing location might change, and there might be times where you'll need to walk your bike or something like that.
Will the trailhead also be open?
So the trailhead parking lot will be closed for the project because we are repaving that. It might be open while we're doing road construction, but that road is closed through traffic, so I anticipate that it won't be getting a ton of use. The trail north and south along South Sain, the city trail that runs parallel to the road and kind of goes off behind the McCoy house, that will be closed for at least part of the project. It may be, if work is not going to start until later on in the project, then we'll leave it open until we need to close it. And if it's finished before all of the road construction is done, we may open it early, but just for planning purposes, I would anticipate it being closed for most of the summer.
And how much of that path
So
Just from Cheryl up?
it will be, no, I'm going too far. So it's this section. So basically we're gonna have trail close signs. We have them right now at this location, but the closure doesn't technically start until it goes parallel to Syene. But we just put the closure signs at the nearest intersection. So
And the
nobody
reason
gets
for
all the way
closure
down
is
here.
just because of the activity happening once you hit the Cap City area there? Or is there actual work gonna be done on the trail?
There is actual work that's going to be done on the trail. There's gonna be path connections for some crossings with RRFBs, and then another crossing at West Clayton.
Some of that trail is in less than stellar shape area.
Yeah,
Yep.
one of the first times I rode it riding to work, had a can of bubbler fly off and burst open. Not a fun way to start the day, so I'm excited to see that be repaired.
And then obviously up here in the phase 3 project, this is changing a lot because the road is basically going to be directly over where the path is now.
So
So
there's really no detour, right? If you get to Capital
There's-
City and Syene and you wanted to go south.
no, there's no path detour. We don't have one posted. There's not a good detour at all.
Yeah.
You have to use, the
Woods
closest
Hollow-
route would be Woods Hollow or MM.
Woods Hollow Road or MM are the nearest
Yeah.
crossings. Don't go down the railroad track.
No, don't do that. Both projects will be complete by mid-September, and then we do have federal funding for the phase 3 project. That's HSIP. That funding is obligated. The money is in the state account. So basically, the state pays for the construction, and we pay them the difference between the construction cost and the grant cost, the grant funding.
Highway Safety Improvement Program.
Yes.
Now, that's one of the ones that was paused last night.
I'm not sure.
Yep. So the reason that I asked Ross to report on all the funding was because last night it came out that US DOT had, quote, paused all what they call discretionary grants. And this would be active transportation infrastructure, safe streets for all, TAP maybe, and you know, the internet was burning up about that today, and I'm sure that our representatives got lots of calls about it, but they say they are targeting these programs for elimination. So that is really tough because that's where a lot of this kind of money comes from, is from US DOT. Carry on.
So, sorry, since you said that, clarify then, you said HSIP is,
So if it's fully obligated, they
Yes.
can't claw it back.
and that's what we're using for these projects.
For this
For
phase 3 of
specific-
Syene.
Phase 3, which is that intersection, is, how do you pronounce that?
HISP.
HISP. That's HISP funding, and other ones will be different funding, and Ross will address each one.
Okay.
But the federal government has paid the state the $1.7 million for this project.
And we're not giving it back.
Basically, yep.
Wayland Road paved shoulders. I'm still contacting property owners for that project. So still looking to bid that out this year. Bryant Road, selecting a design consultant with a tentative award schedule for May. County Highway MM underpass, that design contract is being referred out at the April 8th Common Council meeting to go to Board of Public Works, and then Finance and Common Council. That has TAP funding. That funding is also already obligated, so that is safe as far as I am aware at the moment. BRT, just had a meeting about this afternoon. We're going to be having a May 15th public involvement meeting at City Hall. That's going to go over kind of the 30% plans for BRT and talk about some of the construction impacts to businesses and residents and stuff like that. City of Madison had an apparently pretty good meeting with the FTA, the Federal Transportation Administration, about the grant funding for the BRT. That's through the CIG Capital Improvement Grant, I believe that is. And the Small Starts Grant that the BRT has is a part of the CIG. But that funding right now is still intact. And as far as I understand, it's part of that continuing resolution that was passed by the House, I believe last week, by the United States House of Representatives, and is now in front of the Senate to see if they will pass it. And the deadline for that is tomorrow. So
if they pass it, the government doesn't shut down, and that this program continues for the length of that, then I assume that the City of Madison will have all hands on deck trying to get this funding obligated.
Yep, and that is the path that we're already on right now. Is we're assuming that it will get funded, and we are pushing forward with all design and approval activities. So if it does get funded, we are ready. And if it doesn't get funded, then we can have a conversation about shrinking the project or delaying the project or whatever the best course of action is at that point.
Is the CR through September? Is that what I read?
That's what I remember.
Yeah, okay.
And Ross, just to clarify, the 30% plans that would be presented at the May 15th meeting, is that the ones that we saw a month or two ago, or what percent did we see when we talked about it at this commission?
I believe you saw the 30% plans. There have been revisions since I showed them to this commission.
Now 31%.
Okay.
Yeah, the percentages don't mean anything. It's, I mean, they do.
Cover a broad range.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw
30% plus or minus 28%.
0% funded.
Yeah. Vision Zero, that resolution will be coming to this commission on April 10th, Board of Public Works on the 21st of April, Common Council on the 22nd of April. And the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, Safe Streets for All funding, like Steve said, sounds like it is paused for the moment, but I have not heard from the MPO on where they were at with signing contracts, and I don't know basically where that money is at. So maybe that has gotten in under the wire. I would kind of be surprised if it has, though. So we'll see on that, I guess. Just some other kind of stuff I've been working on related to this commission. No parking ordinance update. Basically trying to switch from having an ordinance that lists out all the streets where we have no parking zones and make it map-based. This would also change the enforcement on abandoned or non-registered vehicles and enforcement of large vehicle parking, like, you know, semi-trucks and stuff like that. Greenway and Coho roundabout, as you guys know, we installed that basically roundabout in a box is what our street staff has been calling it. So anecdotally, I've observed slower traffic speeds with most drivers yielding and using the roundabout properly. I will be updating the current circular roundabout yellow signs to actual regulatory signs like we have at the roundabout to the east, so that the police can actually ticket for cars that drive in front of the roundabout. No parking zones are going to be made permanent. We've had some issues with people pulling signs out there. And then I do have a traffic study in progress to compare speeds and volumes from before and after that installation.
Was there a comment about that roundabout that large vehicles were supposed to turn in front of it instead of go around it?
That is correct.
And if you're in a large vehicle, how do you know that?
There is a sign that says accept buses. And I have notified every large vehicle, every organization that regularly drives large vehicles through there. And I think, as Bill likes to say, if you're driving a large vehicle, you're a professional driver, and I would like to assume that they can tell that they will not be able to go around the back of it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
But yeah, I contacted Metro Transit, Pelletary, the businesses around there.
All the auto transporters.
Yeah, and then those guys don't drive through that intersection.
Oh, good.
And then I also did a traffic signal needs study at the intersection of Seminole and Schumann at the request of city admin. Just kind of a background on how I do those studies. Set up our StatTrack radar trackers for 2 weeks, one on Seminole and one on Schumann. And then for the study, you pick the highest volume day. The 85th percentile speed on Seminole as the major road was over 40 miles per hour, so you can use a reduced factor for all of the warrants. There's 9 warrants in the MUTCD. And long story short, I have a 5-page memo if anybody wants to see it, but none of the warrants were satisfied, and the closest was warrant 2, which is a 4-hour volume, and that was the closest, but it wasn't that close to meeting the warrants.
What does the warrant mean? Sorry.
Basically, if you meet the warrant criteria, which is, for most of them, is there an amount of traffic higher than this number?
Okay.
Then
it's volume, not volume at a certain speed.
It's just volume. Yeah, there are speed and safety warrant, or there's safety warrants as well. They deal with crashes, but there's been no applicable crashes in the study period. Yeah, so.
But meeting a warrant doesn't compel you to install the.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And you can install a countermeasure without a warrant based on engineering judgment, right?
Correct.
Okay.
But generally, industry-wide, these warrants are regarded as standards, yeah. The MUTC doesn't go so far as to restrict you either way, but they're generally good practice to follow.
Killed by a traffic engineer makes a big deal about the fact that as an industry, traffic engineering hides behind the warrants and does not use its judgment and proactively take care of unsafe situations. So I would just urge you as a practice to, if we feel it's unsafe, we should apply the countermeasure whether the warrants are met or not. I think that, it can be handy when there's no warrants and people are demanding a, $125,000 or $50,000 signal that is not needed.
I'd bump that up to 800.
Okay, I'm thinking about when I was on the council. So we used to budget $110,000 to signalize, and for me, the big question is Nobel Drive and South Fish Hatchery, which has not met warrants, but experiences heavy pedestrian traffic. So we'll save that for the intersection discussion or the crossing discussion. Sorry.
So a couple questions on this.
The Nobel intersection is the next intersection that I'm going to do a study on.
Okay,
so
sounds good.
I'm assuming that this is related perhaps to the Newcomb development. They want to get some before and after numbers?
Not that I had heard. The Newcomb development is, fairly far south of there.
The idea being that probably everybody's gonna go north to McKee Road.
Yeah, that might be why. I think this came to me from Chad Brecklin, but it might have come to him from the mayor.
I'm just
But
looking at.
even with the projected traffic from that development, it's
Right.
still not gonna be very close.
Community Maps is telling me that between 2014 and now, there's been one incident at that intersection. I'm
Yes.
assuming there's a left-hand turn probably.
So if it's the crash that I was looking at, and the warrants use a 3-year period,
April
not
of
a
21.
10-year. I think this one was 22, but I might be remembering that wrong. But it was someone turned left
I didn't
and
zoom
hit
in
the
far enough, there were
sign.
2 incidents.
Yeah, someone turned left and hit the sign that's on the pedestrian median, which the warrants use angle and pedestrian crashes. And this was neither of those.
Huh.
So
Yeah, so this is telling me there was one in July of 2017 with 2 injuries, and then there was a motorcycle incident in April of 21 with 1 injury.
okay, both of those would have been outside the
The 3-year window.
3-year study. Yeah.
Do you know, just curiosity, what the history is behind the left, going north on Seminole, the left turn, like jogging into the
Being
left
on
side
the
of the
opposite side of
island?
the
Yeah,
island.
like that's like a very unique.
I don't. I was just asked that by a resident like 2 weeks ago. I don't know the history. My assumption is that they wanted to, like, either the turn lanes were added after, and they widened the road in one direction and put the turn lane where the traffic lane used to be, or they wanted to line up the islands.
Okay.
Because the islands do
Like
line
an
up, but
equal
the turn
on each
lanes
side,
are, yeah. So I don't know the history there.
Yeah, my
It
wife
is-
works at it, and my kid goes to Achieve Gymnastics, so I take that left turn
Yeah.
like multiple times a week. I always just pretend we're gonna go in oncoming traffic with my kid. I'm just like,
I've had that mess with me as a pedestrian because you reach the refuge if you're walking west.
Yeah.
And then you think, oh,
You gotta look.
I only need to look to my right now to, cross the rest of the street, not realizing that the left turn lane is
Yeah.
still traffic coming from your left.
That's something that when that section of Seminole is eventually reconstructed will change if I'm still here, so.
It is disconcerting being there when a car uses that, and you're like,
Just come
whoa,
right at you.
dude, you're on the wrong.
So, yeah, that's my staff report. Any questions on these or other?
Oh, so
Thanks.
by having to set up that tracking device for 2 weeks, that must mean that those things that tell you how fast you're going don't have any recording capability. They just tell you real time. Because there's an indicator there along Seminole Highway that
Speed
says.
feedback.
Oh, that does record.
Oh, it does? Okay.
So for this, I set up the stat track on the west side of Seminole.
Oh,
That
okay.
gets about twice as much traffic as the east approach.
If I'm going south, I'm on the west side of Seminole.
On Schumann on the west side of Seminole.
Shoot.
Oh, you're talking about the one on
There's
on Seminole.
On Seminole Highway. Okay, that
Yes.
was the traffic I thought you were.
Yes, sorry. That particular vehicle speed feedback board does not send me data.
Oh, okay.
Most of our other ones do. That one does not. There's also, my confusion was we recently set one up on Schumann right about here.
Oh, okay.
And that one does record data, and I referenced that for this study, but I set up the stat track about here. And this side of Schumann gets about twice the traffic that this side does. It's like 600 some to 300 some.
Okay. So the volume you were measuring for the warrant was volume on Schumann, not volume on Seminole Highway.
It was both.
Oh, okay.
And turning movements as well are usually considered.
Yes.
Can you say briefly what that machine does, or how it senses and so on?
So it's a radar tracking device. It basically the same way that that a cop sitting on the highway would use a radar speed gun. This sends out the same radar waves, and then it has a cellular antenna in it that sends data back to a dashboard that I can look at. It records it all. It takes speed, volume, and class of the vehicle. It doesn't differentiate turning movements, but it can tell if it's a delivery truck, a semi truck, motor scooter or whatever. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Ross?
Yes.
Take it away, Bill.
So federal funding pause. In August of 23, the MPO had approved, $17 million worth of projects, and all of those projects have scheduled start dates from 2026 to 2029. Do you know the status of that bucket of money?
I don't. My basically rule of thumb is if a state municipal agreement has been signed, then the money is most likely safe and able to be used. And usually when you're awarded the money, you sign that agreement fairly quickly, within a few months.
Especially these days.
Well, right.
Well, this was in 2023,
Yeah,
but even still, I would imagine if somebody says, yeah, you've been awarded the grant, you want to get something in writing as ASAP as possible.
Right. That is usually the case. But sometimes for projects later on in the cycle, and this depends on the grant, what the rules are. Maybe there was a reason that you would wait to sign an agreement. I don't know.
I wasn't sure, since the start dates were in the future, I didn't know if the money was going to be awarded later on.
I'm not sure how how the timing of that all works.
Another thing is that I think that the bulk of that MPO money is formula money, right? That is not supposed to be held up.
Yes. I think as a general statement, that's
so. This formula money is assigned to the states based on population and other factors, and the state DOTs do what they will with it, and the feds do not normally interfere, except that they have this long list of clauses that you have to conform to.
Yeah.
And the exception to that is if you're a metropolitan area, instead of the DOT, it goes to your MPO, but that's the formula money.
Okay, yes, it does say that it says federal everywhere, but it does also say it's STBG.
Surface Transportation Improvement.
Block grants.
And
so that is money that goes to the state, which the state then relays to the projects, right?
Yeah, state gives it to the MPO and then the MPO gives it to us, basically.
Okay. My next question is a fun one. So for the last month or so, if you go on FitchburgWI.gov and you search for GIS and maps and you pull up the first map option in the list, there's an option to put the current road ratings on there. But they're current as of the last time you measured the PACER rating. So I'm wondering.
2023 fall.
Yeah, so it was before the 2024 resurfacing. So I was wondering if you could also put in a layer that we could slap on top of that that says, these are the 2024 sections of road.
That are all 10s.
Right, so that you can cover up sections of the map so that right now we'd have a more accurate picture of it. And then maybe also a layer for, here's what we're going to do in 2020, a layer for each year.
So we have talked about doing that. I think basically changing the PACER ratings for roads that we've already resurfaced is definitely doable. But as far as basically what you're talking about is putting a 5-year plan for our road resurfacing map out to the public where we have, this is what we're doing in 26, 27, 28, 29. Right?
Well, and you don't have to go on you could just say, you know, right now, if we had 2024, we'd be able to look at a more accurate picture of the ratings. And if you put out 2025 right now, people would be able to see what's going to be done this year. And I don't think you would need to go any further in the future than that.
Help is on the way.
Yeah, I could look at that. I mean, our resurfacing plans are also available on the website, just in another place as well.
Right.
As a map or as a list?
As a
list and a
set.
PDF, right?
Yeah. Okay. Usually I post the plan set that we give to the contractor.
Okay.
So, and I don't know that we've posted 2025 resurfacing yet, but we will be doing that soon.
I mean, current state would be nice. That would just involve updating all the ones from last year to 10s, basically.
Yeah, the reason we do it bi-annually or every other year is because that's what WISDOT requires. We rate the roads every second year, so in odd years. So we'll be doing it this year, and all those will be 10s. I hope.
We have a lot to do, so let's get through these reports as quickly as possible. Thank you, Ross. Bill, County Council.
Vehicle registration fee is being referred out to the Finance Committee and will be in front of the Council on April 8th. So that would be a $40 fee that you pay when you register each of your vehicles. We had a mayoral proclamation encouraging the federal government to continue funding grants, and that is on its way to Mark Pocan, Tammy Baldwin, and Ron Johnson. Our sustainability plan was discussed at RCC and at the council. I encourage everybody to read the first section, which is transportation and land use. If you read nothing else, read that.
And that was not approved, that was only discussed.
That was a discussion.
Will be approved April 8th or not?
Yes,
For
correct.
Final action April 8th, okay.
Yeah. So Phil Group E will take feedback before March 18th, and then he and Pale Blue Dot will tie a bow on it. B-Cycle will be returning 2 days from now, we were told, March 15th. Tennis and pickleball courts are now open for the season. April 12th, 8 a.m. on the Civic Campus will be the spring e-cycling and shredding event. The waterway cleanup will either be April 26th or April 5th. We're eagerly awaiting that decision because April 5th is coming up pretty fast. In-person absentee voting, March 18th through 28th at City Hall, not your regular polling place. April 1st, of course, being the voting day, and that is at your regular polling place. Our committee of the whole meeting was moved up to next Wednesday. There is no second council meeting due to lack of quorum, so that week is is being freed up for council. Fitchburg was again recognized as a tree city. There will be listening sessions this spring and summer and probably fall. The mayor and the alders in each district, April 24th, District 3 at the fire station number 3, 6:30 p.m.
We'll note that we're looking into moving that particular one because Cyan is supposed to be under construction
yes.
at that time.
That is true.
So that may change location.
Okay. June 26th, there will be one in District 2 at City Hall, also at 6:30, and those are the only two I'm aware of right now. And we've got 3 finalists for the chief of the fire department here in Fitchburg. There was a meet and greet last week, and the Police and Fire Commission will be meeting on March 19th to make the final decision. That's my update.
Thank you.
On the listening sessions that you mentioned, it's any topic or it's specific to certain topics?
As far as I know, it's a free-for-all, but I'm sure that the mayor and the alders will probably have a few topics in their pocket just in case nobody wants to get a conversation started.
Yeah. Okay.
Ross, did you go to the Bike and Ped meeting or have a report otherwise?
Don't believe they had. Did they have a meeting?
I don't know that they have.
I
Actually,
think they canceled it. There's a Bike and Ped
Working group.
plan working group tomorrow afternoon, and I have to tell Phil not to schedule meetings for 3 p.m. on Fridays. But
Yes, I'll be going to that one. Had a nice conversation with the chair this week.
Mark Hamilton. He will be termed out, so he'll be finishing up his reign this summer. And he's eager to get the bike and ped plan at least underway before that happens. Plan Commission?
We approved an auxiliary building for Foreman's Farm. They have that beautiful event space and they need more room for all the events they do, so that's exciting that that business is growing. UW Credit Union off of Fish Hatchery, they have it now at Ocella Drive. They're gonna change actually I think they already finished it, but they're changing the orientation so that the drive-through, instead of going back on the Fish Hatchery, it goes out into Ocella Drive so that there's a signalized intersection. So that's a nice change. We had to do something expired, so we had to repass it even though it was already pretty much done. And then we approved an ADR.
That was a certified survey map.
Yep, they approve, they every year they expire, you don't get to the project fast enough. We approved the ADR for the Jamestown Chick-fil-A, which is right off of McKee Road near Fitchrona. We postponed the Jamestown Crew Car Wash, which is in the same area. The neighborhood plans continue to move forward. As of last month, there was a draft of the South Stoner neighborhood plan that staff was reviewing. Greenfield draft is in progress still. Staff had some memos that they were releasing in response to some requests from neighborhood groups and environmental groups. And then they're putting out an RFP for a comp plan and zoning code update relatively soon. And that's Plan Commission.
Thank you. Any questions on any of the reports? Okay, council items. Let's start with a motion to recommend approval, and then we got a staff report.
I'll make the motion to approve, recommend approval, of ordinance 2025-006.
Second.
Thank you. So what's going on here, Bill, or Ross?
So basically, this is proposing abolishing minimum parking space requirements for mobile home parks. We have section 32-143 in our ordinance, which currently requires 1.5 parking spaces for each mobile home site. If this ordinance is adopted, there will be no minimum parking space requirements required by City of Fitchburg ordinance. There will still be a state requirement for 1.5 parking spots for each mobile home site that our building inspection and planning departments will still have to enforce because it is part of state law. So
it'll be a no-op for us. Okay.
Do we have many mobile home?
We have one.
Okay, I thought it was just the one on MM there.
There's two.
Where's the other one?
There was one.
There's the one on MM.
MM across from Bucky's Rentals.
Wait, I took notes. One's called Highland Manor and one's called Country View. That looked like they were both in the city of Fitchburg.
I think Highland Manor is Madison, off Moreland.
I know which one you're talking about, and it's definitely not in our city. But I don't know if that's its name.
Yeah, that's east of Southdale.
Yeah, and if Glass Nickel out on McKee Road beyond Maple Grove calls themselves the Fitchburg branch, then people can be confused.
Okay.
yeah, it's not in
Yeah, Moreland Road.
It's right. A little gap.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So that's Madison.
Yeah, got it. It was town of Madison.
So
I
we
think.
have, that might be the town of Blooming Grove that will be subsumed into Madison too. I'm sure it has Madison postal address. Meadowview Road is the boundary between Dunn and Blooming Grove.
So I guess more to the point is, why are we doing this? Like, what's really, other than like, it's the only place we have a parking requirement, but.
Yeah. There is a parking reform network that keeps track of cities that have abolished their minimum parking requirements as a good thing.
It's one of the 6 things that Strong Towns recommends that you do to be housing ready, which is a imperative of the mayor to create more housing and more affordable housing. I can give you the examples of the other ones, but for example, allowing accessory dwelling units is another one of those 6. So I think that we're just trying to make a clean sweep here. We previously discussed here the idea of parking minimums and whether we should get rid of them. And the Parking Reform Network, when we reported that we had gotten rid of all of our requirements, they came back to us and said, what about this one? And so we're doing a cleanup.
Efficiency in government.
Yes. So, and to that point then, if this is the only community here at MM and Byrne, but if we get rid of this at the city level, do we expect anything to change at the state level anytime? Is there any push there? So there won't be a tangible effect, but if the state were to repeal their minimum, we could theoretically see actual, like, visible change. But unless that happens,
I think that the only time that this would have a practical effect is if we were to permit a new mobile home park.
Correct. Yeah. This is not.
They're not going to be able to change their layout without building inspection, making sure that everything is okay, and it's not. So they won't be able to change.
They're also not currently in compliance with this 1.5 parking space.
Oh,
that's the least of.
Are they grandfathered over?
I think so. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so they're old. So,
if I have a mobile home and it's sitting there, isn't that one parking space?
No, this is referring to automobile parking spaces.
But do we actually specify that in the ordinance? Because if I'm a mobile home and I'm parked there, then
I read the ordinance,
parking space.
And the ordinance does talk about, I think they're called parking licenses, and those refer to the stalls for mobile homes.
Okay.
So this is different from that, and I think that while it's clear from the context what they're talking about, I don't know if they've got a definition that would be up to standards for a new ordinance.
Yeah. Okay.
Other questions or comments? Okay. Well, the motion is to recommend approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Bill will pass that along. All right, on to our first discussion item, which is our transit plan update. Ross gave us an outline of a schedule and some content.
Yeah, so basically, like Steve said, I've got a proposed schedule here that I'll just kind of run through. So I'm proposing at our May 2025 meeting, we discuss potential route changes to the transit plan, to add to the transit plan. Then at our June meeting, we discuss potential changes to the actual plan text, like the priorities and stuff like that, goals, those kind of things. And then in July of 2025, we would refer this plan to Bike and Pedestrian Commission, Public Works, and then TTC or Council would refer it to those commissions. And then depending on the schedule, either at the second July meeting or at an August meeting would be when Council would take action on approving a resolution that puts this plan into effect. So I kind of split it up over 2 TTC meetings just to kind of keep discussions to a reasonable length, I think.
I think that's good. Can you tell us a little bit about how much you expect us to do and how much staff will do? So will you be bringing us drafts or will you be giving us homework? How do you think that this will come down? Because it's a lot of ground to cover in a meeting.
Right. My plan is to have kind of any route changes that we've already talked about from previous meetings or just staff discussions, kind of have those proposed at the May meeting. And then if the commission has any additions or deletions or changes, we can discuss that then. Then kind of the same thing in June. There's, like I kind of say down below, there's just a couple of things that I think it would make sense to review and update. Like that plan talks a lot about the network redesign, which is already in place and doesn't really need to be in our transit plan for future years anymore. Besides maybe we did this in 2023 or whatever.
Existing conditions.
Right, exactly.
We have talked here a lot about the 65 and 75 and not so much about the route through Southdale or the one that goes through the Allied and Belmar areas, some of those. Do you want us to, between now and May, do anything about that? Ride the bus?
I mean, yeah, if you guys want to ride the bus or look at route maps and, drive, walk, bike the neighborhoods and say, well, the bus doesn't come here, and I think it should. I think that's useful information, and the earlier you have that, the easier it is to incorporate into a plan.
So, what do we have, G in Southdale and the D over in the Belmar area, D1 and D2? And so, since they're letters, those are all-day service, but
Right.
how frequent is that?
It varies throughout the day. I think in commuter hours, that's not gonna get anywhere. I think in commuter hours, they're generally every 15 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. And then in non-commuter hours, some of them can be half hourly or hourly.
Okay.
Used to be that you could be pretty confident that it was either going to be half hour or hour under the transfer point system because everything had to be a multiple of 30 minutes in order to meet up at the transfer points. Now that is no longer required and you have a little bit more freedom to design routes that might take 40 or 70 minutes to run,
And I think obviously this specific discussion is good, but at least for me, I was looking for kind of feedback on the schedule and the priorities for this discussion item.
I think that the schedule sounds great. And I think that it seems like a reasonable workload for a volunteer committee that is nevertheless interested in transit. I had a lobby day yesterday at the Capitol for Knowles Nelson, and I took the 75. I can't drive, so I've been having a month and a half without driving, speaking to our fall event. But my wife dropped me off at the fish hatchery and 18 minutes to the Capitol Square. It was beautiful. So that's a great service.
All right.
The only thing is I'll say that the council typically doesn't meet the second meeting of July. Typically council takes off, so likely
Then I can just delete July off of that fourth point.
certainly will be August, yeah.
That's why the slash.
And last year we didn't meet in July either, so maybe this gets pushed a month or something. But
Ideal schedule.
yeah.
We have to skip 2 meetings again this year. We're budgeted for 10.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Any feedback on the priorities? They're pretty general.
But I had a couple of questions as it relates to the context of this. So the current plan refers to the comprehensive plan 2030, and then it reiterates certain components of the comprehensive plan as it relates to transit or transit-related things. And so are we operating under knowledge that the comprehensive plan text does not change? That everything that's in it now, everything that we see in the transportation plan that we're looking at now is what's in the comprehensive plan, And that's what would be in the comprehensive plan when we revise this.
Yes, we are operating under the current comprehensive plan, and since this will be done months in advance of the comprehensive plan update. So we will not be able to use future text in a future comprehensive plan that has not been acted on by council.
Right, okay. So our plan will contain text from the current comprehensive plan.
Correct.
Even though it's about to change sometime soon.
Yeah, we could include a sentence about, and this plan can be, use future comprehensive, there can be something in there that,
Especially since we're supposed to update it every year.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
That's one thing we might want to ask to be changed in the comp plan when it gets rewritten. But I want to give a contrary idea. When these plans, bike and ped plan, neighborhood plans, transit plan, get adopted by the council, they get adopted as appendices to the comp plan. And it is my view, and I'm trying to check this, that if conditions change and we want to do something that's contrary to something in the current plan, and the council passes it, that amends the comp plan. So that would be something to check with Deanna or somebody. But I think that, you wouldn't do it frivolously, but for example, if we find out as we work on our transit plan that we're toast as far as our BRT grant goes, and the BRT is in the comp plan and we want to do a baby BRT or something like that, we might amend the comprehensive plan through the transit plan. So I think that's a legitimate way to look at it, and I would ask that you check whether that's the case or whether we are constrained by these plans are supposed to add more details to the comprehensive plan, but the question is whether you can actually amend it when conditions change.
My next sort of related question as it relates to quoting the comprehensive plan is there's more than just a mention of rail. Like in the comprehensive plan, rail seems to be kind of a rallying point, and yet like we never have a conversation other than quiet like rail crossings that we'll discuss, but like are we supposed to be having discussions about rail and rail transportation as a result of what the comprehensive plan says is a desire for the city of Fitchburg?
So I think if you look at the comprehensive plan as it is written, yes, but I think a lot of those mentions of rail are a function of when the comprehensive plan was written.
Originally in 2009.
Right, the future goals and aspirations for the city at that particular point in time.
But it also does say in the comprehensive plan or in the transportation, it does say both freight and passenger. So, and there is freight obviously on there right now.
Okay. And people who look at the rail line and look at our plan and say, when are we going to get rail? I say we need three things. We need a new governor, a new legislature, and regional transit authorities, and we have just one of those things. So I think that it is still in our plan. We would like to have commuter rail at the three stations that are in those three neighborhood plans, but it's not in the near term. But we do think, so a week ago was Tuesday, I was at the Capitol for a passenger rail day, and it appears that there are rumors that there will be a Republican introducing a bill to reauthorize regional transit authorities. So we will see. It's in there, and the plan is written. Sorry?
It's in the governor's.
And it's in the governor's budget, but that will not last long. But the conditions the physical and cultural conditions that caused our comprehensive plan to propose, urban development down the Sighing Corridor. And all those conditions still exist. And the BRT that we subsequently adopted in the region, that plan is complementary to Transport 2020, which is the rail plan, because all the corridors, the north, south, east, and west corridors are parallel and sufficiently far away that they work together if that rail system were to exist. So it's in there for me, and of course I had a lot of fingerprints on that plan because we want it.
I will say, this transit plan, or the last transit plan was a 5-year plan, so I can use that as context for what should be included or not.
Okay.
Well, do we wanna talk about the possibility of getting those rail buses that can drive on asphalt and can jump on the tracks and roll back and forth?
Right, and I don't want to get into detail as much as my question was more to the point of how old and out of date is the comprehensive plan? How much will we be developing a transit plan based on what is maybe going to be removed from the comprehensive plan just a few months hence? And so like we're quoting things in this comprehensive plan that maybe are no longer relevant or would be taken out.
I don't think of it as old and obsolete, it's ahead of its time.
Or ahead of its time.
The comp plan might take longer than you might imagine to update.
Yeah, so
It's probably gonna be closer to like a year-long process.
And so the RFP is coming out sometime late spring, early summer, right? And
Yeah,
so,
and I think it'll be like probably a year before it's complete, so
Do-
it's not like,
yeah.
it's not like we're gonna do the comp plan.
The
like a
last one
month
took
after
2.5
this
years.
plan.
I mean, the first one.
And I think a lot of the language around the rail is like things like support and encourage and things like that, which aren't necessarily, it doesn't need to say, plan a rail line, open the rail line by X date or anything.
Sure.
It's aspirational.
But then in this commission, are we charged with taking
Supporting
that?
and encouraging.
Yes, like doing that, or are we just writing it in a plan and otherwise not doing anything about it?
I think it's reasonable to wait until there would be some reason to do it because of developments at the state level. So, for example, if regional transit authorities were to be reauthorized statewide, it would be a very reasonable thing for this commission to start talking about who should represent Fitchburg or how that representation should work, things like that. And back when there was an RTA in Dane County, we talked about should the RTA run Madison Metro? Or should it continue to belong to the city of Madison? So those are the kinds of things that will come up should the state regulatory environment change. But I don't think we need to deal with it at this time, nor take it out. Any other questions about transit plan update?
Only thing, last time, I don't know how much it'll be part of this, but last time when we were doing this, transit to the senior center was like a main focus of our conversation. If that happens again, they maybe should be referred to as well, the senior committee or whatever it's called.
Yep.
Commission on
Aging,
Thank
well,
you.
Good point.
That is good, yep.
It's not reflected in here as much as that was like the bulk of our conversation.
so,
If we have
Ross.
something like that in there, I'll refer it to the relevant.
yeah. Just to clarify, this was a 5-year plan, it says right in the title, but the comp plan calls for an annual update. Okay, well, we'll do it this year for sure.
And maybe by the time the comp plan is updated, then that frequency can change if we would like it.
I can see why you would want a transit plan to be updated more frequently than every 5 years, but every year seems a little over the top too.
So are we updating it so it'll be like 2025 to 2030? Or are we
Yes.
supplementing things?
It'll be-
Okay,
It'll be 2025 to 2030.
okay.
All right, multi-use path crossings.
Yes, let me scroll all the way through this plan. There it is.
What
so-
PDF page are you on?
31
Thank
of
you.
67. The red numbered page is also 31. So I have a memo for this, but basically City of Fitchburg does not have an established policy for choosing what crosswalks to mark or not walk. I use a few different publications and guidelines to help guide decisions when like a resident or elected official brings up a crosswalk. One of them is Field Guide for Selecting Countermeasures at Uncontrolled Pedestrian Crossing Locations. That's a good thing for like complex crossings that aren't just, put down some stripes. And then for standard crosswalks that are just places where you would just put down some stripes, a good guide is WISDOT Traffic Engineering Operations, that's TOPS 3-2, which I have the crosswalks excerpt is copy and pasted into this memo. With all that said, we do have a lot of crosswalks that do not adhere to the guidance in either of those documents. That happens in a variety of ways. Stuff's just old, it fades, the guidance has changed, all that. And based on staff time and the cost of maintaining all these crosswalks, it's not super realistic to go through the entire city and make sure everything meets all these guidelines, in my opinion. So
Another thing that happens is that the chip sealing wears off and they resurface.
yeah.
Ross, so we have a new MUTCD,
11th edition.
Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices for anybody watching. And did our green crosswalks conform to the previous MUTCD?
That I am not 100% sure on. I have not gone back to check. So I don't know.
Can you tell us which crosswalks you're talking about? Because I looked at Lacey Road and didn't see any green. I looked at Fish Hatchery Road, and the only ones I saw that were green were on the multi-use path, which is a bicycle facility, and so green is appropriate.
So I just want to make sure we're not skipping over things that we do want to talk about.
Sure.
We can go to green crosswalks now.
Okay. Well, let's stay with this. What else are we going to be talking about? You wanted to, Bill asked about contrast.
Mm-hmm.
And what were the other items that we wanted to talk besides green?
So the contrast markings, my main point on this is they're usually used on freeways, and they're basically used to differentiate light-colored marking from light-colored pavement, like concrete.
Highway 12 heading north has it.
Yep, and 14 through Fitchburg has it in some places as well. But if you use them on asphalt, on black asphalt, especially when it's fairly new, the black paint can fade at the same rate or get sun bleached at the same rate as the asphalt, so it's not as effective. And as far as I'm aware, I did a little bit of research. There's no other municipalities that actually use this. It's like state and county level DOTs that generally do this. So, okay, I guess we can get into the green now.
So, Bill, you broached the original question about contrasting and salt and things like that.
Yeah, the crosswalk just over here on Lacey Road.
Community center over to the condos.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I happened to be there and I looked and I was like, okay, so I see the sign, the yellow sign, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
And then only later did I notice, oh gosh, there's an actual marked crosswalk there. But the pavement is very faded, and there was some de-icing treatment, and so there was almost no contrast between the road and the markings, and so I didn't know if we'd ever thought of using the high contrast markings to make that stand out a little more.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, Fitchburg has never investigated using that. And yeah, I gave some reasons, and also it would about double the cost of marking. Because you have to mark the black square and then the smaller white square inside of it, or rectangle.
And just for everybody's knowledge, what does it cost to paint a crosswalk?
So generally, per linear foot of pavement marking, for a 6-inch center line, it's $1 per linear foot. If you blow that up to a type 2 continental block crosswalk, it can be about $1,000 if you're using epoxy paint.
So that would be 24 inches by 10 feet blocks across the crosswalk?
That's by 6 feet for a sidewalk.
Right.
So for a multi-use path where you're doing a 10-foot wide crosswalk, it would be 40% more expensive.
Yeah. Okay.
Plus staff time, right?
In these cases, yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's
the material cost.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we have Lacey at Commerce Park.
Yes. So this is an example of a green painted multi-use path crosswalk that we installed in 2023 that is not in compliance with the MUTCD, because this is a multi-use path, and green paint in crosswalks. Green paint is not allowed in crosswalks. It is to be used for bike lanes.
When it says bike lanes, it means strictly on-road bike lanes, not multi-use paths.
Or bike-only facilities.
Okay.
Which this is not. This is a multi-use path. Fitchburg does not have, besides I guess you could call cycle tracks,
which are green.
Facility. Yes. But none of our paths are bike-only.
So have you, do you use the term at all, cross bike? I have seen that as opposed to crosswalk.
I have not ever used that term.
Okay. So, well, this is a path crossing, and it's my understanding that I think they're 1-foot squares along the outside called elephant's feet or something like that.
Yeah,
they indicate that this is a bike crossing.
Correct. Those are also not in compliance with MUTCD. Those should only be used in bike-only crossings as well.
Since that's fairly recent, how did we choose to do that there?
That was...
KL designed it.
Yes, it was designed by a consultant and approved by the city, and this was not commented on in my review of it.
And this was, these are all over Madison.
Mm-hmm.
Madison just got done 2 years ago painting all the crosswalks on the southwest path at Glenway and Odana and every other place green. And that's why I was wondering if it was in the last MUTCD. I think that this is valuable treatment because what it does is it alerts motorists to watch for fast-moving bicycles. And it brings me to a question. I have read in one of the listservs I'm on about state MUTCDs, and that states that have them, they supersede the federal, and that some states have different treatments that they've found to be valuable, and that the stick-in-the-muds at federal highways haven't adopted yet. Does Wisconsin have a state MUTCD?
Wisconsin does have a state MUTCD. It has not been published for this 11th edition of the federal MUTCD yet. States have 2 years, I believe, to publish their MUTCD. And it has to be approved by Federal Highway.
So would they approve a treatment like this if Wisconsin proposed it? I mean, this might not be a battle we want to fight.
It's kind of and like you said, Madison has it in a lot of places. I've seen it in other cities besides Madison as well. It wouldn't surprise me if the state wanted to be able to use this and put it in there.
Is there a consequence for not being in compliance?
Not really. Technically, some of our federal highway money, like grants, they can audit stuff like this. But generally, it's if they find something that's not in compliance, they say, don't put it back in like that again.
Don't do it again.
Yeah.
Is there a color that can be used?
Not a color. This would just be a regular Type 2 continental block crosswalk or transverse lines. But as a city policy, we've just been doing Type 2 continental blocks because they're more visible.
On Fish Hatchery Road, where they're not green, they have, we have, like at McKee, we have brown crosswalks. And is that MUTCD compliant?
Oh, these. Are you talking about this one?
Yeah.
Different colored crosswalks with different, because of different material colors, are MUTCD compliant.
Okay, but green epoxy paint is a different material, so it's got to be more than that.
Right. I don't have that reference off the top of my head.
Okay.
But you can use brick for crosswalks and stuff like that.
Sure.
Not that it has any regulatory authority, but does NACTO have an opinion on green paint for non-bicycle lanes?
I'm not sure. I'm sure they do. I'm not sure what it is.
As long as we're touring crosswalks in Fitchburg. On Seminole Highway, just south of Schumann, where you did the traffic study, there's a crosswalk that has diagonal lines.
That won't show here, but you can see if you zoom in that they are perpendicular to the diagonal crosswalk.
I see, that's why they're...
And so I have seen it done both ways. You stagger them, but make them parallel to the center line.
Right.
I could say that's what I've seen almost every place else. I don't recall ever seeing them, the continental bars perpendicular to the center line of the crosswalk.
This is the Greenway situation too, right? Like where it's...
Well, it's a walkway because there's no bikes allowed on the other side. You can cross from the northbound bike lane to the path, but you wouldn't go onto the sidewalk.
Yeah.
We still don't have, are we gonna get some signs there too as well? I think that the crosswalk was painted, but there are no sign. There's a,
check on that.
there's a stop, the sign you see on the left is a stop sign for the path.
I can check on that.
Well, given all of this, what does the commission want to do? Do we have advice for Ross? Do we want to, I mean, this is one of the interventions I think that we can do to make intersections safer is apply these countermeasures. And so if we do adopt Vision Zero, I think that we'll be revisiting this in depth.
Well, the thing that is interesting to me is how much effort Madison has gone to paint these green. And it's a bigger city, you've got more people driving around Madison. They hope the drivers hopefully become more and more familiar with the fact that these are green stripes that will contain bicycles. And so, like, to follow what they're doing seems to be the appropriate approach because you don't want every surrounding city to have a different approach to the way that we're marking these multi-use paths.
Which that's the essence of the MUTCD.
But like, who knows if Madison is simultaneously having this discussion too and realizing they shouldn't have painted them green and are planning to stop us, we could be chasing our tails.
Suggests homework for staff. Can you talk to Madison Traffic Engineering and see what they're gonna do about this issue?
Yeah, this will be the second thing I've told them they're an MUTCD violation about.
What's the other one?
The height of signs at medians, that one's really, really minor.
I swear this tape measure was not me.
Well, I was getting questions about it. And
Oh.
it's the same thing. It was like, well, Madison does it. And I'm like, well, it's not an MUTCD. And so then I had to ask Madison why they do it. And they're like, yeah.
So do you think they'll be unaware that that was not contrary to MUTCD?
Well, the interesting thing will be whether they continue to do it, because the MUTCD 11th edition just came out.
Yeah.
Less than 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But it sounds like this green painted multi-use path has never been a recommendation.
They might have been a permission to experiment thing.
Yeah, there was language about it in the last MUTCD. I'm just not 100% sure what it was.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I take us down a different rabbit hole, not related to colors? I don't want to.
Sure.
I'll try to be fast. Just at the very top of your memo, Ross, talking about we don't have an established policy for selecting which crosswalks to mark or not. Would this be the place that we want to then insert some kind of guidance or even a requirement, if we could do so, that we mark any crosswalks near schools and daycares and bus stops and cycle stations? Yeah, so I think if we're kind of looking at all of our goals, with all the other plans that we're looking at, it would be counter to the point if we are trying to encourage people to use transit and then you get to a crosswalk to get to the bus stop and it's not marked. And I'm a little selfish here. I'm thinking of the one at Sherrill and Crinkle Route that I've mentioned before, where I get on the bus at the 65, where we've got one of the 4 sides marked. And it's the one to the bus stop from across Sherrill on the eastern edge of that intersection. But that's kind of was the question that I really had from reading this was, is this a place we want to start getting into some of those recommendations and those guidances for here's how we choose which ones, here's how we prioritize them?
I think that is good feedback for me to take, that this commission, if the rest of the commission says, is interested in a crosswalk policy citywide.
I think that there are a number of areas like that. Another one that we have seen is we have in the current bike and ped plan a facility selection guide, and it says if you're 30 miles an hour you can use bike lanes, if you're 35 miles an hour you use buffered bike lanes. However, what happens is that when you do a new project, there is this great big neighborhood steering committee argument about what the facility should be instead of like, this is what it should be. And a similar thing, we should have a policy so that nobody suggests that we ever install 8-foot wide multi-use paths. So what do you think about having some of these policies? Will consultants who design things for us, or will staff use those policies if we adopt them?
I will. And when I have a request for proposal for consultants to design a street reconstruction, I'll point them to that policy. I think all of these things would be contained pretty well in a complete streets policy. That's kind of an all-encompassing street design document.
Or an even more encompassing green streets, green complete streets policy.
And not green crosswalks.
Yeah.
I was gonna say.
Second for that.
Which I think would be probably if we don't have it by the time we have our comprehensive safety action plan, would probably be a recommendation of that plan is to adopt a complete streets or green streets or whatever you want to call it policy.
And April 8th, the council will pass the sustainability plan, which has that in as an objective. So we can look forward to doing that. So how about you develop a folder to stash all of these things in, and we can get to that later in the year.
Yep. And then to circle back on your Cheryl, I have a memo that I'm finishing up to send out about that corridor.
All right.
And what about a policy of naming streets things like Crinkle Root?
So street names are, the developers come up with the street names, so, yeah. There's some that I would change, but yeah.
The Nobel crosswalk is one that I remember Anna Bijak said, we talked about a false sense of security or something like that, and 40 mile an hour, and I think that one and the one down the hill at Sparklestone both really need painted crosswalks and warning signs, and I wouldn't put in RRFBs because I think that intersection needs a traffic signal, and we will see. But the idea was that traffic signal was in the CIP for many years because of the anticipated build out that we're seeing, Highfield Estates or Highfield Reserve or whatever that's called. All of those homes that are basically going out Micah or Fahey Glen or Nobel to get any place. So I think we'll be seeing some crosswalks there down the road. Anything else that we want to talk about related to this?
Couple of things. Ross, can you explain the WISDOT TOPS recommendation, or it says markings should not be installed at non-intersection mid-block locations without lights, bump outs, refuge island, etc. Some other, safety measures aside from the markings. So they're saying absolutely nothing is better than having painted stripes. Tell us why that is.
Basically for the reasons that Steve just quoted from a previous transportation engineer, Anna Bijak. Yep, a false sense of security and frankly from the municipality perspective, a fear of liability.
Interesting, explain that. Because regardless of whether it's marked, it's a valid crosswalk. So if there's an incident there with or without markings, what is the fear?
So I am not a legal expert, but from what I understand, there is a fear that if there is a marked crosswalk, then the city or whoever marked it is endorsing that location as a spot to cross the street instead of the lighted signal, if you're at Nobel, the lighted signal at Lacey, saying, no, you have to walk up to that signal
6/10 of a mile away.
Because it's safer.
But why did you say it's a valid crosswalk? It's non-intersection. That's
At
what
Nobel.
you read the one that said non-intersection, right?
Right, a mid-block crossing. But if there's a curb ramp there,
yes,
that is
because of a multi.
It's an unmarked crosswalk.
Unmarked crosswalk, but it is a crosswalk nonetheless.
And motorists are regulatory required to yield.
So like the mid-block crossing that we just looked at on Seminole Highway.
Right. Wouldn't a more fundamental aspect of the recommendations be not to build that in the first place?
Yes, but this section is the excerpt just for crosswalks, so it has to have curb ramps to be a crosswalk.
Yeah.
So there may be another section, a couple paragraphs ahead of this that says
don't do that.
Don't put curb ramps in the road.
Therefore, you shouldn't have a crosswalk because you shouldn't have a trail.
But we do have a bunch of curb ramps that go out to the road.
And there are sidewalks along Nobel
that would have to reasonably end. You do see along McKee Road some areas where there's sidewalks on the side street and they come down to the intersection and they have curb ramps that only cross the minor street and do not cross McKee. And the implication is that don't cross McKee Road, you idiot. Similarly, if you see an intersection, and this happens all over the city, you'll see curb ramps on all the sides, but only 1 or 3 of the crosswalks have lines. And that's because they're trying to direct the pedestrians to cross at the ones with the lines.
Or if the lines are on the major road and not the minor road, it's to do with the amount of traffic.
Okay.
So it makes more sense from a financial perspective to paint the crosswalks on the major road to alert drivers that are going through and not stopping if the minor road has stop control, say.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going through, you need to be able to see the crosswalks and no pedestrians are there. If you're stopping, you should be stopping anyway, and it should be safe for pedestrians to cross.
What then, does that, for the mid-block, I'm looking at like the Badger State Trail at South Seminole Highway, just south of the roundabout with Lacey there. So is that saying then that shouldn't be marked, or is that different because it's a state trail? Because that just kind of throws you onto Seminole in the middle of
That
the
one
there.
we're planning to mark.
Okay.
You're talking about which one? Oh, that one, yeah. That one's even gonna get RRFBs, maybe.
If it goes in the CIP.
Are they gonna fly Dane this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just came out like a month ago.
Okay, because I haven't seen it on the, so are you using?
No, that was 2024. That's the new one. Yeah.
That's the new one, okay.
Is this a similar situation to when we have, so like north on Seminole, before you get to McKee, there's like, on the right side, there's like the condos and the apartment buildings there. And they kind of just come out to Seminole. And it's just the mid block.
You said at McKee?
But well before it gets McKee. And there's like that little condo community in these apartment buildings. So like, and there's no real, it's like if there was a person that wanted to go for a walk from those places, they would basically just have to walk up Seminole Highway, I guess, to the crossing.
Yeah, there's no crosswalk on their side.
But this is kind of that same situation, right? Because it's just a driveway that goes to the other side. Like, that's not.
Right, yes. This is not a legal crossing. You could be ticketed for jaywalking for crossing there.
So the implication is that if they were walking, they would need to walk.
Oh, wait a minute, jaywalking is not illegal. You would just be at fault if there was a crash, a pedestrian crash.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Either way, it's not a legal crosswalk,
Right.
because there's no curb ramps.
And no sidewalk.
Yeah.
That's the intersection that I got hit on my bike by a left hook in 2010, November 23rd.
I think what I'm taking mainly from this conversation is it would be useful for the city to have a crosswalk policy.
And I like your suggestion that it would be a very reasonable thing to have kind of a complete streets design book that have these policies so that we would not have to relitigate them each time, that we would be using best practices like we try to use with stormwater and other things.
And I have one more thing to bring up. I was pleasantly surprised to see that there's a state statute requiring 15 feet of daylighting around the crosswalks. But like if you pull up your map again and you look at Nobel Drive near the new Promega facility there.
There you go. To the right, yep.
Oh, so this particular view, you can't see this is different than the current Google satellite view. But if you look at Google Maps instead, you can see a bunch of cars parked along there, and like 3 out of 4 are right up against the crosswalk markings, and that's on one of my regular running routes, and there have been times where I had to step out into traffic in order to see whether it was safe for me to step out into traffic.
Is that zoom out, is that a construction situation?
I think that probably
Yeah, they were
was.
working on the building at that time, and so you get all this construction traffic.
But, so, at some places we have yellow curb paint that
Okay.
reminds people that it is illegal to park there. We would be able to ticket, even if there's no yellow curb paint, we could ticket cars based on that state law.
Okay.
Generally, we put warnings on, but we could ticket if that was a.
Yeah, Index Road, when they were building Ocala and Bella Springs was another example. Of course, there's no paths there. But what I would like to see in those situations is whenever we have a path hit a street where parking is permitted, we should have neck downs or bump outs. And that prevents them from parking physically.
Right.
And and shortens the crossing distance. Anything else, Bill?
That was it.
Okay, thanks for bringing those to us. I think we're under railroad quiet zones.
Yeah, so got another memo.
I like your memos. They're very
They were helpful for me to write and get all my thoughts down. So basically, Fitchburg has a bunch of rail crossings on the WSOR corridor. I list them in that table. And there is interest in establishing a quiet zone on that WSOR corridor, particularly in the areas that have a lot of apartments. Basically, a quiet zone means that trains do not have to blow their horns when they're crossing a road. If it's not a quiet zone, trains are required to blow their horns when they cross and certain distances on either side, all that. I attached the guide to quiet zone establishment process that details what you have to do to request a quiet zone, and just some details on the crossings we actually have. Basically, when you request a quiet zone, you basically have to make sure that a car cannot physically cross the tracks when a train is coming, because they wouldn't have any idea the train is there because they wouldn't blow their horn. So you can have 4 quadrant gates where gates cover the entire road and you can't drive around them. You can have 2 quadrant gates with medians so that you can't just go into the oncoming lane of traffic to get around the gate. And then there's some other things you can do that basically equate to those same 2 things. McCoy Road is just a 2 quadrant gate without a median. West Clayton used to have a crossing, but it's gone now. Central Park Place, East Sherrill Parkway, and Lacey Road have 2 quadrant gates with medians, so those would comply with quiet zone regulations. And the West Clayton Road one would too. The reason I included that is because you could increase the length of the quiet zone, basically, including that. And then down at Irish and Burn, we have no gates, but we have crossbucks. At Irish, there's flashing lights when a train's coming through. At Burn, it's just a sign with no lights. So,
Any crash histories?
I did not go into that for this memo. That would be a function of actually applying for the quiet zone.
I seem to recall, maybe back before I moved to Fitchburg, there was lore that there was a fatal accident at Burn Road. I would be very interested in applying for the quiet zone. And while Irish Lane is kind of aspirational, especially as urban development gets down to the Greenfield neighborhood, I think that the 4 to the north, 5 to the north would be worthwhile. And among those, 4 to the north, we would have to put in a median at McCoy. Any idea what that would cost?
Would a median be required, or could 2 additional gates suffice there?
Either or.
Is the median cheaper? That's what I assumed.
I would assume so. I would think if we put in 2 other gates that we would probably upgrade the existing gates. I'm not sure how old they are at that at that crossing. I would think a median would be cheaper. You can also do delineator posts down the center line. You don't get as good of a score for that as a hard median, but that's also an option that would be extremely cheap.
So there's no CIP project for this. We would need a CIP project, right?
I would probably ask for an estimate from a consultant who has experience at this. I honestly don't have a handle on how much it would cost for a consultant.
I was just asking about the median, not the whole
Oh.
quiet zone application.
Oh.
I did read the guide and it says, don't try this at home without a consultant. So I would follow that advice, but that would be a good thing to do. But do you have any idea what just the hardware for the median would?
It would probably be in the $50,000 range, depending on the length.
Okay.
And the work being done to McCoy right now doesn't reach that far
No.
to the east.
No.
Oh,
But the $50,000 is just to basically complete the application.
That
no,
would be
50,000 was the median.
Oh, to the median, okay.
Yeah.
And
And
design and construction, or is that like just materials?
that would, honestly, that I would probably design in-house.
Okay.
So that would just be for materials. And the order that the Federal Railroad, their guide says is apply for the quiet zone and then do a plan for all the crossings that you would need to change to meet the quiet zone requirements, then make those changes, then come back and we'll give you the quiet zone. So we would probably apply with the plan, and then they would tell us, you need to do this to this
They do a
crossing.
diagnostic
Yeah,
for each intersection, says this is what this one needs.
Yep.
I think that the quiet zone was mentioned in the neighborhood plans for this, in the transportation component, because it was always envisioned, but we've had a lot of staff turnover, so I think that the thread got lost.
it's been continued with our reconstructions. I mean,
Yes,
those-
the reconstructions have all been compliant to, but we just haven't done the FRA part of it.
If there's a multi-use path like Clayton, is there anything that has to be done to the multi-use path?
So it's basically all a big scoring rubric. There's a calculator that's very complicated. But basically you would get points off if you have like a multi-use path that doesn't have gates. But I think, in my opinion, my hope would be that we could put gates on the road and not spend the money to put gates on a path and still meet the appropriate score to get the quiet zone.
I was gonna ask specifically about the crossing at Sain and Lacey. You know, that intersection was redone and there is a multi-use path right next to the gate and but not inside the gate.
Right.
And is there, why would the gate not have a longer arm and been moved over on the other side of that path?
So we did have a discussion about that during the design phase, and I would have to ask KL for specific reasons, but I believe one of them was it would have required a more expensive gate. It had to be longer and heavier, and yeah.
Another thing you can do is you have the long gate going down one end and the short one on the path side.
Which is also more expensive than a one-arm gate.
One-arm gate, okay.
Well, a gate
Even
is
the-
more expensive than not having a gate. I mean,
Yeah.
safety is expensive. What are you gonna do?
Can we just put the gates the other way and stop the trains?
Can
Have to be a heavier gate.
I back us out just a 30,000 foot view? And this is right in my neighborhood. I live probably 3 blocks to the west of this. I very rarely see trains in this area. Am I correct in, I believe my recollection is that there's only like 6 trains a week in this area, so one a day, because it just.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, morning and afternoon.
Okay.
Yes.
So, if that's the level of frequency to the train service right now, could we get away with just doing a quiet zone from Clayton to south of Lacey where the infrastructure is already in place? I would struggle to think it meets all the criteria with all the different projects we want to do to spend significant amounts of money so it doesn't blow its horn, like at McCoy where there's no houses in the immediate vicinity, 6 trains a week.
It's the Lafayette that would be the impacted one.
Or just, can we get away with, can we pass the score by putting the things in the middle of
the bollards,
bollards?
yeah.
I mean, because that's basically.
The reason that the quiet zone was delayed initially was because at that time we did not have the crossing at Central Park Place.
Yep.
We had the crossing at West Clayton. And if you establish a quiet zone, you are not allowed to establish new crossing within it. So, it is possible to revise a quiet zone to expand it. So we could simply go Lacey, East Sherrill, Central Park Place, and at some future time, for example, if McCoy is changed to an urban section, which seems unlikely, then at that time, we could extend it north, just like we would extend it south as urban development goes south toward Irish Lane. So that would be a real possibility. Does that seem like a better tactic to you, Ross, than just abandon McCoy? Because we also have to deal with the Cap City Trail up there.
Mm-hmm. It does. I mean, it would be a lot cheaper. And I think there's an argument to be made about the frequency of trains here and establishing a quiet zone at all.
There's no nighttime trains, right? Currently,
Every once in a while there's an emergency
Okay.
where it comes through at night and then the City Hall switchboard lights up. Why is the train going at night? I think that the real reason for the quiet zone comes back to our previous discussion. If there were commuter trains, there would be every 15 minutes. And then all of us, but you know, as we've said before, that's a long way off. The people are not going to ride commuter trains that only go 25 miles an hour, so it have to be upgraded from class 2 to class 4 and many other things, so.
And, you know, and I would say, I think it makes sense to have a quiet zone where the crossings are already supported. And, you know, looking at the development, it's all such high density and TOD along that transit-oriented development along that railroad corridor. Another 100 units are going up on Central Park Place right now. So, you know, there's so much density there. I think where the crossings don't have to be upgraded specifically for a quiet zone, that would seem to make sense. And I would also think from the development side, if we can't add new crossings, if we put this quiet zone into effect down to Irish, upgrade that crossing, and then Hartung sells the southern part of their property 20 years from now, we ever wanted to put a road through there, you know, would that then preclude us down the road, and then we have to clean up the mess? So for all those reasons, I would personally say keep it from Lacey to, you know, somewhere between Central Park and McCoy. If we can, you know, extend it to Clayton, that's great.
Ross, considering the date, would it be feasible to get a project into this year's CIP that basically has a placeholder so that staff could work on this in the coming year?
Yeah, we could. Depending on the direction we take, I'm not sure it would need to go in the CIP.
Okay.
Are you talking about actually doing the median then? Put that in the CIP?
No. Once it's in the CIP, then he can work on it. But if we were to put in a project for just the 3 crossings that are already compliant, then we're not even talking about the median. The main thing would be hiring the FRA consultant to usher us through the,
So if there's no infrastructure upgrades, then this is not a capital project.
Yeah.
And I can use the money that we have a fund for hiring consultants in our operating budget,
okay.
and I would use some of that money probably.
Is it the sense of the commission that that's a good path forward? Someone want to make a motion?
So, okay, so if we give up on McCoy Road, that means,
For now.
right, that means that a train coming from the north is gonna blow its horn until what point? I'm just wondering, you know, what is the noise level experienced an eighth of a mile away when they're, you know, if they're at McCoy, however far down the Lafayette is and Uptown Crossing there, is that still obnoxiously loud?
I don't know, I can look into that. Train horns, they have to be a set decibel level and pointed in certain directions. That is able to be figured out.
It's directed forward though.
Yeah, and they're also, I think, to the sides too.
But it's not like it doesn't have as much effect
Yeah, going
backward.
back, yeah.
Like it really has directed.
So the northbound train would be blowing on the south side. It would be closer, but the noise would be generally directed north.
Right. But when they're coming north to south, or, you know, a northbound train, well, I guess if we're talking about Irish Lane, that's maybe far enough south that it's not gonna bother anybody in North Point or Hartung Fields. But that's, you know, it's still not that far away.
Yeah, I'm mostly concerned about the McCoy crossing and whether the southbound versus northbound trains would affect in the north end of Uptown Crossing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to spend a ton of money on this if we're talking about 6 trains a week.
Yep.
I think if we can apply for it with a reasonable amount of money for what already exists, I think that sounds like a good, I don't know how much it would cost to hire somebody to help with that. If that's a significant cost, I think that's worth.
Let me make a suggestion then. Ross, why don't you, if you got a second, call up and find out what the ballpark figure is and report back next time. We'll put it on as a future agenda item. And when we find out the consultant costs $25,000 or $75,000, then we can make a decision, or maybe even more. But it seems like this is, I don't know if that's a reasonable number.
I would hope it's under 25. I hope I don't have to get the mayor or council to sign this.
Okay. Well, the alder might want to.
That's pretty wild that you have to get a consultant to
I think
walk
like
through it in order to be successful.
in theory, you can do it yourself. I think it would probably be a better use of city resources to get a consultant to do it.
There's a bunch of like contacting the railroads and whatnot.
And the Commissioner of Railroads,
Again, I'd be happy.
Wisconsin's Commissioner of Railroads doesn't weigh in on the quiet zone, right? They're not involved in that process.
I don't know.
Okay.
I had a question on, so the rail line goes through farmland, and if you look at the map, there's a transportation corridor through a farmer's field. And I'm just wondering, is there any requirement for a train to blow its horn at anything other than an intersection with a road for car traffic?
I don't know about for driveways.
There's a private crossing south of Irish Lane in the Mark Jones property.
That's the one I'm talking about.
And I was asking, so a week ago, last Tuesday, we had that passenger rail day downtown, and the Commissioner of Railroads met with us for an hour, and I asked them, they don't have any purview or enforcement or interest in private crossings. Private crossings typically are just historical agreements between that landowner and the railroad. And you can see lots of them down the Badger, which used to be a railroad.
Yeah.
All right. we will revisit this next month then. Thank you for doing that research. Are there any other future agenda items we have besides the, we will be seeing Vision Zero come back as a council item. We will be looking at the transit plan update as a regular work item. Any other agenda items that people think can anticipate at this time? And of course, if something comes up during the month, you know, write to Ross and I, and we will try to put it, accommodate it.
One for me is, I believe May, we need to do chair and vice chair elections.
Yep. And I'm not termed out, right?
Correct.
Okay, you know that rule, okay.
But you were appointed 2 years ago,
Yes,
so you can do 2 in a row, but not 3.
okay.
Which is, that's an interesting thing too, because if somebody were appointed mid-term, like with
Doesn't
a
count.
month left, they could serve a maximum of 2 years and a month.
Okay, or 2 years and a month less than a term.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so officer, and we will have new people. So if anybody knows anyone who would like to be on the Transportation Commission,
We
Micah
need at
is
least one, possibly
pretty
2.
pretty likely to be an alder, and
Like pretty like
They're right in campaign here.
That sounds threatening.
Does anyone have something to tell me?
I hear Elon Musk is taking it.
He's got one in Wisconsin to deal with already.
So we do need some people, and I would be particularly interested if someone who is self-identified as a transit user or as an advocate for those who walk were to be interested. And in the walking area, it's very often parents of school-age kids, the elderly, and advocates for the disabled. So keep your eyes out. Let Ross or me or the mayor know if you have any good candidates.
We should see if anyone on the Commission for Aging Well would be interested. Did you talk about transit quite a bit?
I did.
Yeah.
I did meet someone who is a possibility and meets none of those criteria and lives in District 4, but was very interested in transit. And I talked to him recently and said he would watch a couple of the meetings and get back to me. So
Thank you. Appreciate you scouting that out.
I think I prefer 3 people to commissions, not specifically TTC, but.
Okay.
If they happen to have an engineering background and have previously worked for the DOT, well, you know.
Yeah, or federal railroads. Our next meeting will be April 10th, and no thoughts of canceling it right now, so are there any other announcements?
It says there is another announcement.
What?
It says
That's-
that's last year.
Oh, I'm
That's
sorry, never mind.
Okay.
Last
Um,
minutes.
I guess the only other thing that I would say is, we need to find 2 months in the year to drop. And, April would be potentially a logical choice with the switch from old alders to new alders and the shuffling of commissioners that
And the other one
entails.
should be in good biking weather.
So I will say for the April one, I'm planning Vision Zero to be
Okay.
discussed. I mean, if you guys just want to vote it through at another meeting, I think I know what you guys are going to say about it, but.
We usually just December, right? That's historically, haven't we done? one
Yeah, I
of
think
the-
that's probably a good one too. All right, well, let's meet in April.
Okay.
All right, motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you all.